Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Stephen Morris with An Honest Look podcast, and I am actually here with Mark Anthony Morris. This is probably going to be the most, one of the most significant interviews that I've ever had, because it's very rare that a father gets to interview his son. This is my son, by the way. 27 years old, super proud of him. And we've been through the ups and downs of fatherhood. With fatherhood being yesterday, it was kind of cool to be able to say, hey, my son's in town. Let's do a podcast and talk about an honest look at fatherhood. Fatherhood is one of those things that there's no book on it. There's no handbook. You kind of figure it out as you go. However, I thought it was kind of important that I interview my son just to see what my fatherhood skills are like, and if some things that I did, mistakes that I made, how they affected him. I think it's imperative that a lot of fathers talk about this with their children, especially you being my only son. I have 3 daughters, and Mark Anthony's my only begotten son. So, Mark, introduce yourself to the people real quick. Tell them who you are. And what you all about, man. This is actually a really good question for me to ask you, because I've never asked you who you were. So who are you, Mark?
I'm Mark Anthony Morris, 27 years young, living in Orlando, Florida. Kind of been through a few, different journeys in my life in terms of what I wanted to do. I used to be in the creative space a lot, and then kind of just realizing those skills and how those translate to the quote unquote real world.
Right.
But as you know, big into music, performed for quite a while. I accomplished some goals that I never thought I would, so I take a lot of pride in that, whether that's, performing in Miami, Orlando, just kind of taking my journey as far as I thought I could, and then, transitioning that into, once you come to the realization that, sales is kind of everywhere, and that you were kind of selling yourself, and, using those same skills, especially now in the digital age where you're marketing yourself, and kind of understanding, how those can translate to business. And then I went into car sales shortly after that, did that for a few years. And then, with the pandemic, everybody had their stimulus money. So that was fun.
Right. I made some money from a little bit of a tragedy. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hey, I'm just like the roofer waiting for the storms.
Understood.
But yeah, kind of growing up around, the business, helping you out with that free labor for a couple summers,
Exactly.
Kind of made me want to re-explore the payment side of, the business and stuff like that. So I've just been kind of building my portfolio over the last couple of years and such. And that's kind of my short story.
So now that you've heard about our relationship as father and son, let's hear from some dads and sons on the street. We want to take an honest look at fatherhood. Okay. If I had to ask you what was the greatest advice your father ever gave you, what would you tell me? Don't get a tattoo. Describe your dad to me.
Patient, resilient. My dad knew how to give a lot of support, and he also knew how to give corrections.
I would say the best advice my dad ever gave me was about Lombardi time.
Okay, what's that?
If you're early, you're never late. So he was an incredible man, and he gave me so many opportunities, and just got me to where I am today.
My parenting style is blank.
Direct.
If you had to talk to your kids right now, what would you say to them in the camera?
I'm proud of all of you, whether you believe it or not.
Always be yourself, be genuine, never worry about going with the crowd. You are super unique in your own way, and that's what makes you you.
My dad is a fabulous example of hard work and dedication.
If you had something to say to him now, what would you tell him?
Just how much I appreciated him being in my life and how much I loved him.
So, son, I want this to be a fully transparent interview. We've had our ups and downs as father and son. For those of you who may not know, Mark is my son from my first marriage. Him and his mother and I were college sweethearts. We met in the late 90s. We had Mark in 1997, got married, and I was not the best husband. I was not the best father. And I was just young. Like I said, I had Mark at age 23. We ended up having his sister by the time I was 26. And so it's so funny because my son now is 27. And I remember one thing you told me before. You were like, yeah, Dad, I don't know how you had 2 kids by the time of age 27.
Yeah, I know. I know it's a different world, but still, I don't know, just maturity levels. And funny enough, you're talking about kind of, our conversations that we're planning to have today. Something that I've kind of learned, especially regarding our relationship, is that you got to look at your parents as people, not just, all knowing, all.
Right. Well, I think what a lot of kids don't realize, and I had to learn this too with my own dad, because my dad, I always wondered, did I pass along some of the things that Frank Morris instilled in me. Like my dad, him and my mom were separated. I grew up primarily living with my mother. My mom really was strong in the church, so that's where my big devotion to Christ comes from. But then my dad was in the streets. And the only time that I spent with my father, we would go to bars and drink, and then he'd be like, all right, get me home. And I'm like, all right, I'm 13 years old trying to drive a grown man home. And not saying that, you know, I didn't love my father, or that we didn't spend the quality time that I wanted, because, you know, like any other kid, you want your dad to take you to baseball games and you want him to take you to see the Knicks and stuff like that. My older brother did that. My dad didn't do that, but that just wasn't his thing. But it wasn't until he passed that I learned that he was a man just like me. And he was trying to figure out this fatherhood thing. So my first question to you is, as my son, tell me how the divorce affected you with me and your mom in the beginning. Like how did that really play a part with you being where you are today? Because I know it had to be hard seeing your parents kind of split up, and then, you know, it's kind of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you kind of at one point kind of figure like, where do I fit in?
It's funny that you say that. It's hard for me to kind of put things back into that perspective because just, you know, over the years, just kind of gaining some more insight. But at the time, you know, you kind of feel as if you're different from all the other kids.
Okay.
You know, you may not have, you know, those two parental units in the house, and it's kind of seeing those other families, so to speak, more traditional. But as I've, you know, like I was talking about, getting older and kind of had a wider view of the landscape. Unfortunately, divorce is a lot more common than I thought at that time.
Yeah.
So, in terms of that, I guess it just gives me a little bit, I wouldn't say necessarily a chip on my shoulder, but just like, I don't know. From that point forward, I knew that I was going to have a different experience from some of my friends, if that makes any sense.
Got it.
But yeah, as I try to put myself back into that space, I just, you know, I gained a lot of independence. If that makes sense. I did have my younger sister at the time, 3 years younger than I was. So I had to kind of not necessarily lead her, but, you know, just be available for her, you know, whether that's after school or, you know, if she needs help, you know, dealing with the bullies, that type of deal. But yeah, I'm actually really grateful for the experiences that I've had. Yeah, because I look around and, you know, I don't know if it's just I was a bad kid, you know, stealing the mom's card, stuff like that. So like all those experiences have led me to, you know, kind of who I am today, and I'm kind of grateful for, you know, I wouldn't have had it any other way, to be honest with you, because I don't know who I would have been otherwise. If that
I
makes
got
sense.
you. And the funny thing is, I do believe that our experience create us as a person, but as a dad, there was a lot of guilt. And I'm telling you this now, there was a lot of guilt on my side for not being there. And I had to apologize to your mom a lot. I had to apologize to you guys as kids, because I was selfish. And that was the part that really, for years, I had to deal with the guilt, because I didn't want to be my dad, and I ended up becoming my dad. Does that make sense?
I'm sure you see it differently. You know, I guess I'm just more like at peace of where I am now. You know, I'm sure like at the time it was a little bit of a storm, but I feel like, you know, going back to, you know, my independence that I developed, a lot of kids don't know how to do a lot of things for themselves. Not saying that I'm still a kid, but I don't know. I just there's still things I aim to learn from you, like we were talking about shaving the other day.
Right. We're learning about how to shave correctly in your mid-20s.
There you go.
I was proud when you asked me that.
You said I'm getting a beard at 30, so
it's
you
gonna
got
look like
2
this.
years. You got 2 years. I'm bringing receipts.
It's cool. It's just so funny, because the way you felt, and it, at least from what you're telling me now, is like it helped you. For me, I felt like me not being there, it kind of was just something that really hurt, because I was still trying to find myself, even though I was a young dad. And the most important thing to me was letting you guys know that even though me and your mom weren't together, that I was there for you guys. Like one of the things that I would do, and I don't know if you picked up on this, like when you guys would have events at school or something, I would even though when I didn't even have a car, you know,
you was getting there.
I would get there. I would take the bus, the train, the plane, whatever I did to get there. I wanted you guys to know that no matter what, I was still trying to be in your life, and I was still trying to be active. Some things I may have dropped the ball on, and some things, you know, I tried to be my best. But it's funny, because I talk to a lot of dads that are dealing with situations right now, like they're going through divorce. And one of the things you said is divorce is a lot more common than most kids know.
For sure.
Like adults, you know, I think the divorce rate now is like 61%. That's high. And so whenever you introduce a child into that situation, that child doesn't understand.
For sure.
They think mom and dad are perfect and everything should work out fine. But
It's the Disney situation, not to
Correct.
bring it back to Florida. But
no, it's fine. It's fine. So what age were you when you were like, hey, my parents are flawed? Like, what age were you when you're like, you know what? They ain't got it all together.
To be honest with you, probably in my later teens.
Okay.
So probably 18 to 20, that range or so. Because at that point, you're out of school, the traditional public school. I didn't go straight to college. I took some time off.
Okay.
But at that time, you kind of get to have an experience with the real world, so to speak. And like, oh, okay, this is what I've been told, but this is how it is, if that makes sense.
Right.
So, kind of get in your eyes, a fresh look at the situation. Not to get too specific, but like, I don't know, just this is I guess what I'm thinking about you, going back to that conversation we were having a little bit earlier about the children. I don't have any kids. But yeah, just I'm still mature and as a young man myself. So to be able to kind of put myself in that perspective of I'm trying to raise a young man himself,
right?
And I'm still trying to figure it out. That's got to be all types of anxiety and
and especially when you weren't raised by another black man or another father in general. I had parental figures, I had father figures, but like I said, it's different when you got that everyday dad. And part of me, I remember my cousin, she had interviewed me for one of her podcasts, and she was like, do I feel guilty since now Stevie kind of has a full-time dad? By the way, Stevie's our youngest, she's 11.
Resident superstar.
Yeah, don't tell her that, but she's actually in the studio with us right now. But my cousin asked me on her show, she was like, hey, do you feel guilty about the fact that you robbed your kids of a full-time dad? And I was like, wow, I never thought about that at first. But then I didn't feel guilty because I know that there are people out there that don't know their father at all.
Correct.
And that's got to be crazy. One of our good colleagues, Michael, I saw him write the other day on yesterday for Father's Day. He wrote on his Facebook post, he was like, happy Father's Day to all the fathers except mine.
Oh, wow.
And that can really mess up a person's it's just amazing how a father either being present or being known in the child's life can really either have a positive or a negative effect. I've seen situations like, even let's take example Shaquille O'Neal.
Sure.
Shaquille O'Neal,
his
stepfather stepped in and he was like, hey, Phil's my dad.
Yeah.
And so that role of father, I've learned over the course of time, it's the person that's there that's molding you. Mm-hmm. And even though you're not necessarily a full-time dad, just because you divorced the mother or you separated from the mom, you still need to try to be in your children's life because you got to have some type of impact. Do you agree? Yes or no?
Oh, most definitely. And, to your credit, even though the divorce was between the spouses, you never divorced the children like you were talking about. You moved heaven and earth to make sure that you could be at those events that were sentimental to us. And then going back to, kind of how that's molded me, that's just given me an attitude of, I can make it happen.
Right.
Not having a car, that's not an issue. We can make it happen.
Right.
And then,
I still have your Cinderella playbill from the seventh grade. Candace wants me to throw a lot of that stuff away. I can't. It's too sentimental to me.
I feel that.
Because like I said in the beginning, there is no book on fatherhood, man, and every relationship is different. How do you feel about being my only son?
Hey, I wouldn't change it for the world, I guess. All but right. Sometimes it gets a little lonely. They're talking about lip gloss and the latest nail polish. I know way too much about makeup, to be honest with you. So I guess hopefully it'll help me out in my relationship.
No, thank you, studio. I love it, man. I kind of love the fact that you're my only son. You know why? Because don't get me wrong. If you had more brothers, I'd probably be like, oh, I'm glad I got boys. But the fact that I do have
a special relationship.
Yeah, we got the same middle name.
Oh yeah.
It's I guess that's why I gave you so many names, because I knew I knew you would only be the only one.
I guess.
But
foresight.
But for me, it allows me at this age, and I think our relationship has gotten stronger as we've gotten older. I realized the sensitivity of life, from when I almost passed in 2020.
For sure.
And I realized every day is a day for me to really be the best I can be at every role that I am, as a dad, as a husband. Getting remarried kind of changed me to really understand that you can always start again. And
sure.
and if the person gives you a chance to kind of revisit and regroup and reestablish a relationship, people change.
For sure.
You know, that was the one thing that I think if you hold people to a certain standard all their life, you're always going to be disappointed. So let's talk about that real quick. Where you are now, 27, you mentioned about your girlfriend.
For sure.
How has dating been now that's like, okay, because, you know, a lot of people, they look to live-in mom and dad, and they're like, okay, I see my dad do that, and I'm going to learn. How has dating kind of been affected by me not being there on a day-to-day basis? What have you kind of adopted in your own mind? Like, hey, this is the type of boyfriend I'm going to be. Or should I ask Carly?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say because I only know the one way, if that makes any sense. So I don't compare it to, you know, if I had, you know, this experience. Okay. But in terms of, I guess, how I deal with women, you know, I'm respectful. At least I'd like to think so.
Right. No, you are.
I guess I take relationships very seriously, for sure. You know, I have a wealth of, you know, knowledge to kind of tap into when it comes to that type of stuff. So whenever I talk about, you know, I think that this girl may be serious, I can actually, you know, talk to somebody who's, you know, had their ups and downs in their own, you know, marital lives and stuff like that. And they're like, well, these are the signs you should be looking for. You know, if she makes you feel like this, if you feel like you're ready to commit to this person. So that gives me like a lot of confidence and reassurance in myself, you know, make sure that I'm on the straight and narrow. Okay, cool.
What would Carly say if I asked Carly, I say, hey, Carly, how would you describe Mark as a man today, being raised primarily, I mean, let's be honest, you were primarily raised by your mom. What would you think your girlfriend would say?
It's funny that I guess she's getting not necessarily the finished product, but the results of, I guess, my journey so far.
Right.
So she would say that I'm definitely an independent individual, dedicated. I'm actually very big on family.
Okay.
So if you know, my sisters ever need anything, I'm there at the drop of a hat, similar to you. She'd say I'm very dependable. Hopefully she would say this. I'm dependable, right. Accountable, and, you know, a really loving person. I can always be, you know, fun loving, but at the end of the day, sometimes I can always be guarded as a man.
Right.
But you know, I tend to show her that, you know, softer side, and I feel like she's been blessed to see me be vulnerable.
That's got it, man. That's awesome, man. It's so funny because like when I was your age, I always felt like I had to be like the man, and you know, the persona back then, and even some of the persona today. We're influenced by hip hop a lot.
Of course.
Men feel like they got to have these harem of women,
for sure,
and that was the mindset that I had because that's what I saw. I'm glad you took a different route because the fact that you said family is important to you and relationships are important. I think that's one of the things that, as a man and as a father, you got to remember that the things that you do affect those that are around you. So I appreciate you for imparting that. What would be some of the things that you would want to ask me in regards to fatherhood? Because I've never had it to where you've been like, all right, well, Dad, did you do this or did you think about that? Like, do you have any questions for me?
I mean, I just know that there's just, like you were talking about, there's no instruction manual. I'm just trying to imagine, you know, how do you go from, you know, having a life that you're supposed to be, you know, taking into account, be responsible for, rather, you know, all the things that come with it, from, you know, insurance. That's kind of been a conversational topic lately.
Right.
You know, healthcare, things that, like, when you're autonomous, you don't really think about as, you know, too much about yourself.
Yeah.
I guess what are some things that you had to take into account regarding the child that you might not even been doing for yourself at that time?
Yep. The funny thing is, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I think no man should get married before the age of 30.
All right.
And I say that because when I think about it, you just said you got out of high school about 7 years ago.
For sure.
It's the number one, the human brain doesn't fully form until age 25, 26. That's why they kick you off your insurance at 26. And so if the human brain doesn't fully develop till age 26, why am I getting married at 27, 28, 29? So I got married at 25. And the crowd I hung around was just the wrong crowd. I was the first one in my crew to get married, so I didn't really understand. So I wasn't hanging around the right mentorship, and I wasn't fully developed. And so if a state law came out or a federal law came out today that said, hey, men don't have to get married until age 30, I'd be for that. I'd be for that. Because number one, most of us marry younger women anyway. True. And then secondly, we're not on a time clock. Like most women, you know, we got to have a baby by 35 or 30. Like they have their goals. That men, we don't think that way. And so therefore the advantage is on our side to really get to know ourselves. And that's the mistake that I think a lot. And don't get me wrong, there's always exceptions to the rule, because I know some guys that got married at 21 and they're still married today. They're in their 50s and they've been married 30 years. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's amazing. But I don't think that's everybody's. I don't think that's the massive story. Most men, when they get to their 30s, they want to be financially well off. They want to be able to offer something, and they want to bring something to the table. And I think I didn't have that. And so, not to make an excuse, but in turn, that's what, at that time, I was very not focused on insurance and real estate and developing my career, because I just wanted to have fun. You know, Biggie was still, well, no, Biggie died before you get, but rap, I was still a hip hop cat. And, and that part really, it forced me to make some mistakes that I'm just now getting out of. Like I paid for years on a lot of the things that I did because I was not thinking of my kids or my ex-wife at the time. So with that said, you know, you can't go back to yesterday. For sure. You can't. And so it's like, well, how do I make Steve Morris a better person today? So like I said, our relationship now, I love it because you're a man.
Oh, definitely.
And so I can tell you what, you know, the things you're going through at age 27, because I've been there. I can tell you, you know, about shaving because, you know, my brother taught me how to shave. And so those things, that it means more to me now. And I think that's why they say parents make better grandparents. Because they do, because they know all the mistakes they made with their kids. And so they try to make it up with their grandkids. It's truly amazing. Talk to me about work, because now we work together. And when I say we work together, one of the highest honors was for you to follow in the merchant services space. And for those of you that don't know, we help businesses to process credit cards. I've been actually doing that for a little over 2 decades. And my son, I tried to get him into the business when he was 18, wasn't really there. Like he said, he wasn't focused on it. But now the highest honor for me, or at least one of them, because you make me proud all the time, was the year before you like, hey, I want to do payments. And I was like, for sure. It blew my mind. What made you make that decision?
To be honest, I was selling cars at the time, you know, using those skills coming from, you know, music previously, trying to be an entrepreneur. And I'd always, you know, been fascinated about what you did every day, you know, being able to kind of not necessarily come and go as you please, but you're doing something different every day. No day is the same. And then, of course,
thank God.
the monetary reasons are bad as well, but just always the entrepreneurship really got to me, and the fact that you've built a team around yourself, you have an office, and you've just been continuing to scale. It's crazy. Every time I come back to South Carolina, you got a new toy to show me. So that was, I guess, my initial interest, and of course, I'd had previous knowledge, you know, working with you for the summer, so I had a little bit more knowledge than, I guess, the regular agent, and I knew you were going to put me in the best path to succeed. So I figured it was a natural conclusion to, you know, kind of take you to that pizza shop and ask you, like, hey, what would it look like to kind of move forward? And then I was grateful that you introduced me to, you know, some of your colleagues that, you know, have my best interests as well. Right. So it was kind of a no-brainer. And then I was always looking for something that I could make a career out of. Whether it was selling cars, you kind of explained it to me, you know, with the reoccurring bills, you need reoccurring income. That's right. So I would be successful selling cars. And then, you know, during that time, we were talking about the stimulus check was a thing of the moment, but now that time has passed, you know, the dealership, funny enough, is actually turned upside down. So I was kind of looking for my next phase, and, you know, payments. This is something that's going to be every day, and
it's not going anywhere.
Of course, not. The market's going to continue to expand. You know, there's always a new innovation coming down the pipeline, so it's something that keeps you, you know. It definitely keeps you interested, and there's always something new to worry about. Right.
Well, one thing I will add to that is when I was your age, I was broke in payments, but I always saw the road. I always saw the road ahead. For sure. And for me, that's the one thing I want to encourage you about. No matter what happens, just don't quit, because if you stick with it, it's gonna work out. And I know that sounds easier said than done, but it's a matter of just really being devoted to where this industry is going. Because here's the thing, nobody writes checks anymore. Let's just be honest. Even when you go to the bank, they don't even give you a checkbook. They just give you like the direct deposit form. Like, yeah, give this to your HR department. So they don't even promote checks. Back in my day, they used to say, oh, well, we want you to get the Snoopy checks or the Garfield checks. They just want to give you a debit card and get out of there. And so what that tells me is your generation, 27, 28, 29, 30-year-olds, they do everything on their phone.
Sure.
It's all Cash App, Venmo, and Zelle. So 20 years from now, when you're my age and I'm in my 70s, you're going to be making a lot more money because everything is going to be zeros and ones and electronic payments. So that made me proud that you followed in my footsteps. Did you get any like resistance from anyone of going this route, or was it just something that you like, hey, this is what I'm going to do regardless?
My peers, funny enough, but I think it's just a situation where if you try to do something that's off the beaten path, you just kind of get some, the naysayers. Hey, I don't know if this is, necessarily going to work for you. Why don't you try to get something a little bit more traditional?
Right.
And then with those folks, you kind of just take it with a grain of salt, and I don't want to necessarily live the life that they're living. I'm looking at something a little bit larger. So my family, especially my girlfriend's been super supportive of me.
That's good.
Yeah, because, in sales, it's hard, man.
My mother hated when I got into this. She hated it. She was
gosh.
like, what do you mean? You're not going to make any money.
Yeah.
And it was tough for her to understand. But here's the thing. I knew she loved me, and she wanted me to have a regular, because back then everybody was like, they want you to get a 9 to 5.
Time for money.
That's it. I'm working linear income. I give you time. You give me a check at the end of 2 weeks. But I saw what was at the job. I saw the guys driving better cars and going to, they just had a lot more time to buy back. And so
they knew something you didn't.
Correct. And so I remember when I got my first real residual check, my mother was like, okay, you keep that job. And so she was able to kind of see a little bit of my success in the beginning. But it's just, like I said, I'm proud that you decided to go this route because it's not for everyone. It is hard.
For sure.
It is very hard. Merchants are merchants, but as a dad, it prides me. We actually, matter of fact, I'll look right in the camera. We were actually featured in the Green Sheets.
Right.
They had actually, shout out to Patty Murphy. She featured us in the Green Sheets probably about 2 months ago, and we were the head article talking about father and son in payments. And if you would have asked me like 20 years ago if that would be the case, I would have had to tell you no, because there were years when me and Mark just didn't see eye to eye. Let me ask you this question. Let's talk about that, about dads and sons that necessarily don't always agree, because we don't always agree on everything.
For sure.
But I always try to respect you as a man, and hopefully you do the same. What would you give advice to those guys that, they may have had an argument with their dad, or they may not have had a relationship with their father? Do you think that kind of affects them down the road, always wondering what could have been, or like maybe just people are people?
I guess it's a case-by-case basis on that sense. In terms of, disagreeing with your father, you got to look at it as, they're giving their best advice that they can from the information that was presented to them during their time of, coming to age. So you've got to kind of survey the landscape and understand that some things are universal.
Right.
But at the same time, there is, I guess you can look at education in that sense. The cost of education has gone up. The return for many people has not been the same.
Right.
If that makes sense. But if you're coming from, in this analogy, if your father is more traditional, he's going to tell you that you need to go to school when you may not think that's the case. It's not saying that he's
I don't think that anymore.
Oh,
I used to be like,
you're
I had that
very modern.
Yeah. College, let's be honest. College for me, I went to college in the 90s. You went to college. You graduated 2020. So 2-decade difference.
Sure.
Back then, like you said, we were forced to go. He just said 3 decades. I was trying to make myself younger. But anyway. So 3-decade difference. My mom didn't want me to go to college. She wanted me to go to the military.
Oh.
I forced my hand to go to college. I wanted to go to college because I just wanted to get out the house.
For sure.
And I almost flunked out my first year because I was partying all the time.
It happens more than you think.
Oh yeah, I know. There's a lot of and the colleges probably capitalize on that.
Oh yeah,
they're like, oh okay, we're gonna get this tuition, and then he's not gonna be there. They statistically they know what's going on.
Of course.
But I wanted to go to college because I just wanted to leave the house. I just wanted freedom because I was under my mom's hierarchy for 18 years.
For sure.
And I just wanted to be free. Did you ever get to that? Did you feel like that at one point? Like, hey, I just want to be free to do my own thing, or
most definitely.
Okay.
Going back to the fact that I'm the only boy, growing up in a house of women. You want to have your own space to invite women, kind of just do your own thing, grow
right.
as a man. So whether that's, going off to college, moving out of the house, you kind of go through that phase of I'm ready to kind of be on my own or try to be on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's just part of growing up.
Okay, got it. So yeah, that was me. So 18, I wanted to get out, almost flunked out, but I never went back home after that. Matter of fact, when I got your mom pregnant, my mom kicked me out, so I had to grow up quick.
She said, "Oh, you want to be out?"
Yeah, she was super traditional. When I got your mother pregnant, she used a word called fornicated, and I was like, "What is that?" So that lets you know how traditional my mom. But she grew. But that leads me back to my point. My mom was born in the 40s.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what she got married at 15. I didn't know all this after my mom died. That my mom got married at 15 and had my sister. They're only 16 years apart. I was like, oh. Light bulb.
That go back to that perspective. You get to kind of break down, not psychologically break down, but just kind of understand where your parents are coming from.
Yeah, because I'm like, okay, just like how you couldn't understand how I had 2 kids at 26, I couldn't understand how my mom had a kid at 16. So that means you were pregnant at 15 and then moved from Georgia to New York. My mom had 4 children by the time she was 24.
That's crazy.
But that was a different time, different generation.
For sure.
And so now as we progress, here's my next question to you. You said that you and Carly, you want to make her your fiance, which means that you're making that decision that one day she will be your wife. We don't know when, and we're not putting a timestamp on that right now. I saved you.
Good looks.
So
that's that
here's my
fatherly
thing,
advice.
Though. But let's say, for instance, you guys do get married and you do have a son. What are you going to tell your son? What's that fatherly advice that you're going to give him? Because it's so amazing to think about that. Like, of course, I would love to have a grandchild and be alive enough to have a grandchild. But from your perspective, from your life, what would be some of the key nuggets of wisdom that you would give your son?
A big one is nobody's perfect, including me.
Wow, that's big.
Yeah, so I wouldn't want him to look at anybody, as holier than thou.
Right.
Just keep Christ first and understand that as men or as humans, we are flawed individuals.
That's right.
I'll try to do the best that I can, but I can't promise him I'm not going to make mistakes.
Right.
So I think that'd be big because I guess going through my own journey and my relationship with my parents, thinking that they were infallible or there's just they always have the answer, even if I didn't necessarily agree with it. You've got to kind of become your own autonomous being and understand that we may have disagreements, but at the same time I might have some more wisdom that I could bestow on you that may not universally fit, but the principles could still apply. Right. I think you hit the nail on the head, because as a child you look at your parents as everything, because let's be honest, they are everything. For sure.
When you're born, you can't do nothing. They washing you, they changing you, they feeding you.
For sure.
Everything is dependent upon those 2 people. And so when you get to that age of around like 6 or 7, or maybe around the time when you're in like elementary school, you may see mommy and daddy arguing and be like, okay, something's not right. And most children internalize that and they put the blame on themselves.
For sure. Because nothing could be wrong with them. It's got to be me.
Got it. I never caught that perception before.
For sure.
Okay, got it. So it's just amazing that would be your first advice to your son or your daughter, that, hey, I'm not perfect. I'm not. You're not going to worry.
Hey, we can't have a Reeve run in this generation.
I think we're gonna have more boys in our family. That's because the girls run the show right now.
We're gonna lose our name.
Exactly. You're my namesake. That's why fathers. That's why fathers want to have sons anyway. Like, you can have one son and you want like 13 of them. You're like, my name is gonna go on.
There you go.
Men are so prideful.
The legacy. It's the legacy.
This was cool, man. I'm glad we got a chance to talk, and I really wanted to just kind of see where you were at and have you hear my heart as well, man. I love you with all my heart, man. And my advice for you is just keep being the greatest, man.
Thank you.
I think fatherhood, and I read this somewhere, they said the father is the only man that wants you to be better than him.
Correct. That's 100%. That's 100%.
And I know that about my dad. I remember when my dad was dying, and that wrecked me for a little bit, because I always looked at my dad as Superman. The one thing about my dad, and I think I've kind of adopted this, he knew everybody.
Sounds familiar.
My dad knew everybody. He was like Mr. Network, and I think I got that from him. But I remember when he was dying, and I'll give you the scenario. He's in the hospital. My dad died from cirrhosis of the liver. He was a hardcore alcoholic. And that was another thing I had to learn about him, is that the reason why he drank is he was in the war and he didn't want to do heroin.
Yeah.
So his vice was alcohol. He just couldn't shake it. And so as he lied on his deathbed, his last words to me were, his last words to me were, "You my Superman." And I was like, wow. And it broke me down because he was my Superman. But here we are 25 years later, he's gone. And it's like, okay, I can pass those same words to you, that you're my Superman, because I want you to be way better than I ever was in my life. If this is my last interview, and let's say I take my last breath tonight, this will be recorded forever as my testament to you that you're going to be a great man. And you're going to pass. And then the great thing about it is, if you have a son, you're going to say the same thing, because because they're your seed. That's your children are the legacy on earth, especially your sons.
For sure.
Your girls, they're going to get married. They're going to become somebody's wife. But your son, honestly, that father-son relationship, and I hope that all of you fathers that are watching this really will try to develop a relationship with all your kids, but especially your sons, because your sons carry your namesake, and then your sons are your legacy on the earth as far as your surname is concerned. I talked to a lot of dads, and we'll kind of wrap it up with this one. I talk to a lot of dads that are struggling. They go to child support and they're going to family court, and many of them are struggling with
the system is not for them.
Thank you.
The system is not for them.
Say that one more time. Where's the applause on that? Come on, was a production guy?
Female audience. The system is not for them.
Yeah. Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Talking to a lot of gentlemen, now that I've had a girlfriend for quite some time now, talking about getting to the next level, and then just talking about hearing their struggles.
Now, I was about to say, are a lot of your friends dads now that you went to high school with, or
quite a bit? Not a lot of them are married.
Okay. Okay.
But I have quite a few dads in my life. But even just talking about, before we even get to the marriage part, with the child support and kind of the time split, or time sharing rather, it's just not meant for to benefit the men. I understand why, but I think as times has progressed, women being in the workforce and things of that nature, there may need to be a little bit moving and shaking with that. Not saying that I'm an anti-feminist or anything like that, but just you need to know what you're getting into. So if you're gonna be,
I didn't coach you on saying that.
Funny.
I don't know, because this is my show, so people are like,
disclaimer at the bottom.
That's right. He told his son this. I did not tell you to say that. And hey, wow, that's amazing. Because I see dads that are going through, and they're like, I'm paying such and such percent, and don't get me wrong, there are some deadbeat dads out there.
For sure.
All right, there are dads out there that got like 9 kids by 9 different women.
For sure.
You need to wrap it up, or you need to get a vasectomy. I'm just saying that right now. Like, there's no reason that you need to be Nick Cannon out here. For sure. You don't need to be spreading your seed. But there are dads that it just didn't work out with the mom for whatever reason.
For sure.
I think that the court systems, like I said, they are designed to make sure that income is fair, or they try to make it fair. But I didn't know, and I'll tell you, the courts get a percentage of child support before they disseminate it out to the mother. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that, but that's not surprising.
Yeah, here in South Carolina DSS, I'm putting y'all on blast. They take out a percentage. So if you pay $500 to the mom, the mother does not get $500.
$375.
There we go. The mother does not get the full amount. So that means that the system is, come on, our judicial system it's a moneymaker.
For sure.
They're not going to do anything for free. And when you think about it, why would they? If a mother and a father can't come to terms on their own, and you decide to go to court, the court's going to get some money out of that.
Going to charge you to mediate it.
Correct. And then the father goes to jail. If he doesn't pay, or if he loses a job, now all of a sudden they get money off of the penal system.
For sure.
So with that said, man, dads, take care of your kids. Don't spread your seed around to multiple women. Try to make it work out if you can. And here's the thing. If you can't make it work out with the woman or the wife or the girlfriend or the baby mama, your children still need you in their life. That's the message for today. Would you agree?
Most definitely. I did want to add, because I know we were talking about some fathers that may not have a strong relationship with their children.
Okay.
I would encourage them not to give up, because some things do take time. The children may come around later in life, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. I was talking about kind of my growth and my journey in our relationship. We did have our highs and lows, but as I've matured as a man and kind of being able to not necessarily walk into your shoes, but to try to understand you more as a person. You know, it just makes the relationship that much easier. And the fact that you've remained genuine in your you know, your efforts to, you know, extend yourself and show me nothing but love and grace. You can't do nothing but respect that. And as you know, you continue to knock on that door, hopefully your child will one day, you know, come through that as well and meet you halfway. So that's just my little message to the dads out there.
All right, well, we can end on that note, man. That's big. That's big, man. Like I said, dads, make sure you guys stay in your kids' life. They didn't ask to be here. I mean, let's be honest. They didn't ask to be here. You did the do with the lady, and they were born, and so now you do owe them a little bit of your time, your love, your talents,
a little bit of understanding, a little bit.
Yeah, and nurturing, and that's like I wasn't a nurturing 20-year-old. I promise you, I wasn't. I'm a little bit more nurturing in my 50s, and but time changes us, and I love how Muhammad Ali said it best. He said, if you're the same person at 25 that you are at 50, then you just wasted 25 years of your life. And we all grow, we all assess, and we all want to be better. So this episode number 5, is an honest look at fatherhood. It's dedicated to all the dads that are out there trying. Go out there, reconnect with your children. And here's the thing, kids. Don't give up on your dads. You know, they may not have been the person that you needed them to be at the time, but time progresses, and hopefully they have too. Make sure you guys subscribe in the comments. Mark Anthony, before we go, I'm going to give you a plug. See, this is how good of a dad I am.
Oh, gosh.
I'm going to give you the last minute to tell them what you do for a living and how people can contact you for merchant services. Don't call me. Call him, because I'm on my way out the industry. He coming in.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Even though I'm out in Florida, I do take clients nationwide. I've got them as far as Georgia, Alpharetta, down to Orlando right now, but always looking to expand. What I do is I help business owners take advantage of, you know, the Durbin Amendment passed in 2010, so they can process payments the same way the government does, utility companies, either way, meaning that they don't pay any processing fees. So I'd love to get in contact with you guys. You can feel free to hit my cell phone, 240-485-6000, or you can shoot me an email at markanthonym@bryteps.com. I'd love to connect with you. I'm also on Facebook, Mark Anthony Morris. You can catch me on Instagram, posting inconsistently, or maybe even my TikTok. But yeah, I look forward to, you know, networking with you folks, and yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do some business. Awesome. And you guys can catch us at An Honest Look Podcast, also sponsored by the Gatler Group. And we also have a new company that's coming out, Paperboy Biz. We are actually going to be promoting thermal paper, cash register paper, to-go boxes for a lot of our businesses. This is a business that's in the works, so paperboybiz.com. Make sure you guys check us out. That'll be up hopefully by the time this podcast is released. And I'm super excited, man. I love you, son. I love you. You got it, man. I'll talk to you soon.